The season finale of Ms. Marvel just dropped on Disney Plus. So today we're going to talk about the entire season and discuss those major spoilers. What is up, MCU fans? Thank you so much for clicking on this video. Before I go ahead and share my thoughts on the entire season 1 of Ms. Marvel, I want you to start the conversation about it in the comments below. Feel free to talk spoilers. Like I said in the opening, like the title suggests, this is going to be a spoiler conversation. So in case you haven't seen the finale of Ms. Marvel, go check it out on Disney Plus and then come back to join the conversation. I don't know about you guys, but coming into this finale, I was extremely worried about where this show was going to go. I love the first 4 episodes. Such a consistent pace and unique style in terms of the storytelling in this show, with one of the most lovable characters to ever be introduced in the MCU. And then in episode 5, it just felt like the wheels came off the tracks and the show went completely off the rails. Quite on a literal sense, I felt like this show had lost the plot. However, for the most part, the finale really bounced it back for me. As with this finale, the show just strips back the globe-trotting adventure with cosmic generational powers and parallel dimensions and brings it back down to basics, focusing in on the compelling family dynamics, the style that made this show stand out, and has Kamala just being influenced by her family, bringing back that sense of community that is so important and distinct to this character, leading to some very moving moments with her family. And Kamala's mother has gathered the family for her to reveal the truth about who she actually is with her powers, and they all just know. And every scene with the family in this episode is exactly what has made this show excel, and the show focuses on that. I was not the biggest fan of having damage control as the big bad in the finale of the episode, but thematically it allowed the show to focus on what it truly mattered. Kamala is not a fully formed superhero yet, even by the end of this show. So the fact that they're just trying to fight off damage control, understanding as kids that they're in way over their heads, trapped in school, just being very creative about the maneuvers they pull off with science experiments and softballs, and just trying to avoid them. This all allows the coming of age aspects of the show to come to the forefront and give it again that John Hughes meets Scott Pilgrim kind of vibes that have made this show so joyful to watch. It would have helped if throughout the show, throughout the previous episodes, we had seen more of these kids in school, doing these experiments in science class, playing sports in PE class, going around the halls. We saw a little bit of the school in the first couple episodes, but it was more like one of the halls, and then we saw one of the classrooms, and we didn't really understand the geography or how these kids were acquainted with their school grounds. And so I think spending a little bit more time at school would have helped the geography placement of the action in this episode work out better. But as a whole, the fact that we're stripping down this show where these kids know that they have no shot against damage control, they're basically just trying to quote-unquote survive, it allowed the show to focus thematically on these issues of acceptance and bigotry and intolerance that Kamala, as a member of a Muslim community, is actually fighting against. And that's her real strength. Kamala's not a superhero who handles stuff with pure raw strength, even though we do have some great action sequence where she unlocks her embiggening powers by the end of the show to try and help Kamran escape. That's the point. She doesn't want to beat Kamran, she doesn't want to harm him, she doesn't want to fight him. She wants him to be safe like his mother wanted him to be safe. Even against damage control, Kamala never tries to fight them. She tries to save people, she tries to save her friends, and to help everyone. And that's what makes this character such an important superhero for the MCU. She's a fan, essentially, that got the chance to become this superhero. So it's important that the show never lost sight of the lessons throughout the season that informed Kamala as a character. And the action is always only there to highlight the character progression and writing. The action is visually stellar. I love what they did with Kamala's powers. They give us the embiggening by the end of the show. I love what they did with the lights, how the different shapes that Kamala creates contrasted to Kamran's are so different, where Kamala creates more rounded shapes, more friendly shapes, where Kamran is just spikes and it's obtrusing and it's very uncontrolled, unrefined. And then even the colors. Kamala has dark blues and purples, usually colors associated with negative emotions, and Kamran has bright yellows and greens, which are usually colors that are more positively used when it comes to characters' emotions. Which leads to a very intimate finale where Kamala doesn't have everything figured out. She's still trying to just use her creativity that we've come to know and love to try and make for the best possible outcome for everyone involved. She doesn't want to get rid of Kamran even when he turns, which feels so abrupt in this finale. She wants to save him as well as she tried and failed to save his mother. She wants to save her friends. She wants to save her family. It's always just about helping people. And so Kamala is a beam of light in this episode, in this entire show really, where the best moments in this are the family moments. You have the one in the beginning, and then even getting her name when talking to her father. They turned something that was just verging on this line of cheesy, and it created for an incredibly wholesome, moving moment between father and daughter that comes to a complete full circle from the beginning of the show, even with getting her suit from her mother. Beautiful full circle moments that always put the family dynamic on the forefront. And even with all that, the show finds a way to drop the biggest bomb possible at the very end, where Bruno has once more investigated Kamala's powers to try and figure them out, and turns out she has a mutation in her genes. The word, my friends. They said the one word that changes everything, but we were all waiting to hear. We even hear the theme song in this kind of techno version.
Kamala, there's something different in your genes. Like a mutation.
And I kind of love how Kamala just absolutely underplays this moment, as she has no idea of the repercussions of it. Kind of reminds me of average casual MCU viewers who are going to see this moment and are going to be like, ah, that's nice. But we know what's going on. This is huge, as I did not expect mutants, or even the concept of mutants, to be presented onto the MCU in Ms. Marvel so soon, so fast. But at the same time, it's a nice turnaround from Kamala's origins in the comics as an Inhuman, as in the comics, the Inhumans were at one point presented to replace mutants and the X-Men, and now come the MCU, poetically, it all comes back around. It all, again, comes full circle. So it's the biggest possible bomb they could drop, but yet they still have something else in the post-credit scenes where Kamala's bangle just begins to shine out of nowhere and looks like she unlocks her polymorph abilities. She's thrown out of nowhere into her closet and comes out as Carol Danvers, Brie Larson, in what looks like a very small costume that she is using. And I'm actually quite unsure as to what this means, because one way of reading it is Kamala has unlocked her polymorph abilities. She can transform into anyone else, and in this case, she transformed into her favorite superhero. However, a different way of reading this scene is that this could be a teleportation power instead of a polymorphing sequence. Once she steps out of the closet and looks at the piece of the broken door door with a picture of Captain Marvel, and around the room to the endless memorabilia and posters and drawings of Captain Marvel, she never once looks in the mirror. So there's no reason to believe she realizes she looks like Carol Danvers. So I'm wondering if instead of Kamala's polymorphing powers from the comics manifesting, this could be teleportation, and she transported herself to where Carol was because she was thinking about Carol, as she seems to always be thinking about her favorite superhero. I'm still going with the first option. I still think it's the polymorphing powers. She still has the bangle in her left wrist, but there's just enough ambiguity to me in how the scene is executed and plays out to at least try to interpret something else. In regards to the overall series, I found Ms. Marvel to be a delightful, joyous watch from week to week. Iman Vellani absolutely crushes it. The family dynamic is moving and tender and gives the show this sense of intimacy that is unlike any other show in the MCU or movie for that matter. The style, colors, vibrancy, and energy of the show give it a unique feel week to week, a very intimate family story where we find ourselves inserted into an underrepresented culture, and yet we find so many familiar issues and themes in how this family handles day-to-day life. It's a beautiful coming-of-age story, seeing a hero being molded by those closest to her. When the show focuses on this, it's when it's at its best, and while eventually the story expands, the scope gets bigger, it introduces a ton of mystic elements, it's supporting characters and subplots that unfortunately by the end felt completely irrelevant. The one thing I felt like never faltered was the characters. It was Kamala Khan, it was Kamala's mother and father and brother and friends. The character dynamics in this show are so rich, and Iman Vellani is a true superstar. Her charm is bursting out of the screen. It is electrifying her to watch in the most joyous moments, when she becomes a superhero, when her mother gives her the suit in this finale, and then when she's kicking ass, when she's embiggening herself, when she's having fun being a superhero, saving people. And she pulls it off beautifully. As far as debuting performances are concerned, this young lady had an insurmountable task in her hands, and that is to carry a show, to carry a blockbuster show. She's been thrust into this ever-growing cinematic universe where she's being a representation of fans everywhere, of little girls everywhere, of Muslim young girls and boys everywhere. Iman is just an inspiration in and out of the screen. She brought Kamala Khan to life in such a unique way, creating one of the most charming, charismatic, and honestly lovable heroes in the entire MCU, and it's just delightful to see her in this show week to week, and I cannot wait to see her again, this time interacting with her favorite heroes in the MCU as she is thrust into space, or however they're going to do it, because as of right now she's still on Earth. They still need to get her for the Marvels and take her out into the cosmos. And I'm so happy that that is the case, that they didn't take Kamala away from her family or friends throughout the show, as the family dynamic in this show is so much of what makes this show a joy to watch. Her father and her mother, even her grandmother. There's just tenderness and moving emotions in those family moments as they explore the origins and the mystery of the bangle. And I think we could have done with this show just being those conversations, Kamala trying to become her own person, coming to this conclusion where it doesn't really matter where the bangle came from, doesn't really matter that you're a djinn, you're your own person, you tread your own path. Those were already the lessons she was learning on the first half of the show. I just wish the show hadn't lost focus of this journey, of how small scale and intimate it was on the back half. This leads me to discussing my biggest issues with the show, which is kind of its expansion and the mystery behind the bangle that takes Kamala to the past, finding out she's a djinn, introducing the clandestines, and the notion of this parallel dimension that they want to open with the bangle, this secret society and the red daggers that protect this veil from being open, otherwise it can completely absorb and destroy our dimension. And this just never ties up nicely with the intimate coming-of-age story that we know, particularly once you take into account the mutant bomb drop at the end of the series. It just makes it all feel completely irrelevant. Even more so than episode 5 made it feel irrelevant, when it suddenly completely destroys and gets rid of all these underdeveloped antagonists and plot threads that it was developing through the bulk of the mid portion of the show, and then just leaves everything hanging with no clear antagonist or conflict for the finale. Granted, the finale was allowed to be more intimate like the early episodes of the show, and that ended up paying off really nicely, but then why is this middle portion of the show here? Why are we expanding into this grand scoping parallel dimensions and traveling back to the past with these evil people that are the same as Kamala, and she has to question herself, and it never pays off in a clever or compelling way. When Kamala travels back to the past, we get to witness this tender, moving love story about two lost people who found one another, created a family, and that love eventually gave birth to Kamala Khan. That's nice, but it feels so removed from the story that we were witnessing before. It ultimately is a disservice to Kamala and her journey. Where in episode 5 it completely feels like the show lost the plot, cramming an entire episode's worth of story into those final 15 minutes where Najma sacrifices herself and Kamala comes out to her mother, and Najma's powers are transferred to her son, leaving this door open of will he be a villain, will he not, and then suddenly he is a villain. Like, it makes no sense. We got no understanding about the bangle's true powers or its name or its origins. Same with the clandestines and the djinn as a whole in this parallel dimension. This one episode 5, just highlights how much the middle portion of the series lost its way, where it never fully inserted the clandestines and the grand scoping aspect of the series into that more intimate story of this young girl coming into the world and finding out who she is, discovering herself as she becomes this superhero. There's some nice thematic and narrative threads continued as Kamala goes to Karachi, reacquaints with her grandmother, who kind of shares this fractured relationship with her daughter that Kamala herself has with her own mother, and that's nice, but we didn't need to waste so much time exploring the bangle and the djinn, who were never compelling or interesting antagonists on their own, where their motivations were so vague. Plus the traveling back in time and the truth revealed behind that, how Kamala was always the one that helped the grandmother and all that when she was young and got lost from her father, completely contradicts the rules of time travel in the MCU established in Endgame. So the middle portion of the show was frustrating because when Ms. Marvel is great, it's fantastic, and the show kind of lost its identity and its style in the middle there, where I was like, where's the show I loved? Where's the show I was watching up until now? And thankfully it bounced back quite a bit, but what was the point? The middle portion of the show felt pointless, where we have 6 episodes to develop Kamala, to watch her grow through this journey, and 2.5 of those episodes were completely taken away from this character. It's a disservice to how good the show pulled off its narrative at the beginning and how well it pays it off at the end, but in the middle we just dragged and did something else entirely that feels so disconnected from what the show actually is. This sudden and shocking cutoff of supporting characters, story elements, and plot points didn't feel like a grand twist, but like the show had literally lost the plot, leaving an audience lost and confused and utterly feeling directionless coming into this finale. Thankfully, they proved us wrong, but you still have to ask, why did we waste so much time if there was no point, no relevance to any of these people or story elements? But even through this uneven mid-portion, Ms. Marvel ends up wisely highlighting the intimate themes of Kamala's journey of heroism through her compelling family dynamic and a beautiful coming-of-age origin story. The series' passionate craftsmanship shines through with its unique style, energy, and vibrancy, giving way for some truly moving character moments, fun action, and ultimately one massive cinematic universe-changing reveal. I'm giving Ms. Marvel a B+. Those are my thoughts on Ms. Marvel, but now it's up to you to continue the conversation in the comments below with all the spoilers, all your theories. What did you think of that mutant bomb drop? Let me know anything and everything down there. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll be back very soon. Big thanks to my channel members for always supporting the channel, and until next time, love each other and love the movies.